Rich Owens here from markmeldrum.com with a quick reminder that the August window for level 1, 2 and 3 is fast approaching. And as always, we'll be putting on in the weeks running up to the window office hours, where you can turn up with your questions on the topic of the day and have a live instructor answer them. It'll be myself or Darren for level 1 and 2 and Mark for level 3. If you want to know those dates, I think they kick off around about July the 9th. So if you get onto the site and find the live sessions tab on the left-hand side there in the menu, get to office hours, and you should scroll down and see there are the dates for level 1, 2 and 3. July the 9th, we kick off in level 1 with a little bit of quant and derivs. As I say, there'll be office hours for level 1 and 2 with me or Darren, and then Mark for level 3. And closer to the level 3 exam, Mark will also do some drop-in sessions where he'll talk about the constructed response sections on the mock exams. So look out for that. Build it into your review program. Come armed with your questions, the areas you're struggling with, pose your questions, and we'll address them in those sessions. But whilst you're here, I thought I'd also share with you a video on duration, Macaulay duration, the investment horizon, and the realized yield on bonds. Relevant across level 1, level 2, and level 3. You'll be calculating, or rather interpreting, the duration gap at level 1, calculating yields at level 2, and trying to balance reinvestment risk and price risk when you're looking at assets and liability management at level 3. So relevant across the board, fundamental concept. So take a look at this and enjoy.
Right then, in this video, as the title suggests, we are going to start calculating realized yields and then tie those realized yields into the duration gap. This is not tough. It's actually something you already know how to do. What we're going to do is exactly what you've done before in quantitative methods, and that is just to calculate a holding period return. What do you need for a holding period return? Well, what you paid for the asset at the start and what you have at the end of the holding period. Well, for the bond, that's going to be two things. We're going to work out what the coupons are worth at the end of the holding period, assuming they are reinvested at the yield that's available. And we'll work out the proceeds on the sale of the bond. So we'll have what we paid. At the end of the holding period, we'll have the future value of the coupons and the proceeds. Then it's easy enough to work out the return over that period and annualize it given the number of periods we held it for. This is the bond we're going to use to do it. 10-year, 10% coupon, 1,000 par, yielding 7% at issue. That prices it at 1,210 spot 71. By all means, go and check that using your TVM. And the first example we're going to choose, we'll sell the bond after 4 years. And we'll investigate what happens if we sell it after 4 years at a few different yields. So our assumption throughout here is that the yield changes immediately after purchase and then remains constant at one of 3 different levels. First example, just as a benchmark, we will actually leave it at 7%. So we know we paid 1,210 spot 71. Let's work out what we end up with at the end of that 4-year period. First of all, future value of the coupons. There are 4 coupons. We are using 7% as a reinvestment rate, and the coupon itself, 10% of 1,000, is 100. Put that through your calculator, you'll get 443.99. At the end of 4 years, those reinvested coupons have grown to 443.99. Proceeds, well, we'll just have to price the bond at 7%. If it's a 10-year bond and we sell after 4 years, there are 6 periods left. At a 7% interest rate, 100 coupon and 1,000 future value. Compute that, you'll get 1143. In total, that means we've got a future value of 1586.99. So now we've got what we paid and we know what the future value is. We can easily calculate a realized yield. You can use your calculator again if you wish. Remember, this was a 4-year holding period, 4-year investment horizon. Paid 1,210.71. I'll show that as a negative PV to show that I paid it out. 1586.99 future value. Compute your I, and lo and behold, you get 7%. Conclusion, the yield doesn't change. We will realize the yield on issue. But let's do a more interesting example. On the left, what happens if rates drop to 5%? Well, future value of the coupons, 4 periods, this time reinvesting at 5%. Your future value would be only 431.01. Lower reinvestment rate, lower future value of coupons. But proceeds, the bond with 6 years left, now valued at 5% yield, would be worth 1253.78. That gives you a total of 1684.79, a higher future value. And when you put that through your calculator, it gives you a realized yield of 8.6%. Interesting. Let's try upping the yield to 9%. If we do that, future value of the coupons, 457.31 at 9%. Proceeds, if we sell the bond at a yield of 9, 1044.86. Again, you can check all of these with your calculator. Feel free to pause the video. Total that, it's only 150.217. Realized yield is only 5.5%. So look what's happened. As we said, if the yield stays where it was, you realize the 7%. But here, when yields dropped down to 5, our realized yield increased. It went up to 8.6%. Yet when yields increased up to 9, our realized yield dropped to 5.5. Why? Well, it's to do with the future value of the coupons and the proceeds. When the yield dropped to 5, compared to the 7%, we lost out on $12.98 of reinvestment income. That would have brought our realized yield down, but that was more than offset by an increase of $110.78 on the proceeds from sale. The impact on the price of the bond, what we could sell it for, outweighed the reinvestment income hit that we took. Conversely, up at 9%, the increase in the reinvestment income of $13.32 was not enough to offset the decrease in proceeds from sale. Now, the obvious question is, will that relationship always hold? And the answer is no. For this bond, we had an investment horizon of 4 years, and we saw this relationship, drop in yields, increase in realized yield. But let's change it up and see what happens if we hold it for 9 years. So we'll use the exact same technique. Again, feel free to pause the video and check these calcs if you want to. But at 7%, future value of the coupons plus proceeds gets you 2225.84 and a realized yield of 7%. Drop the yield to 5%. Look what happens. Future value of the coupons and the proceeds at 5% gives you 2150.28. That is a realized yield of only 6.6%. Whereas at 9%, future value of the coupons 1302, proceeds 1009, we get 2311, and the realized yield is 7.4%. We are seeing the opposite relationship here. A drop in yield reduced the realized yield, whereas an increase increased it. That's because with a longer holding period, the impact of the reinvestment income was greater than the change in proceeds. 95.14 we lost out on in reinvestment income at 5%, more than offsetting the gain in the proceeds on sale. At 9%, the extra 104 reinvestment income more than offset the drop in proceeds of 1887. So it's clear that for longer holding periods, reinvestment income dominates. For shorter holding periods, the 4-year period, your price risk, your drop or increase in proceeds dominated. The burning question is obviously, at what point does that relationship switch? Well, let's answer that to finish this video off with, for this bond, 7. Where did I pluck that from? Well, if you go away and calculate the Macaulay duration of this bond, you will find it is 7.06. It is that point at which the reinvestment income and change in proceeds are exactly balanced. An investment horizon shorter than that, as in our 4 years, and it's the price risk that dominates. An investment horizon greater than that, as we saw with 9 years, and it's the reinvestment risk that dominates, and the extra or drop in reinvestment income. So which way your realized yield goes in response to a change in yield is all about where you are in relation to the Macaulay duration. And in fact, we can calculate the duration gap to tell us which way it's likely to go. Your duration gap is Macaulay duration minus your investment horizon. So for our example of 9 as a holding period, we had a duration gap of -2. And a negative duration gap, as we just demonstrated, means that reinvestment risk dominates price risk, and you will benefit from an increase in yields. Because it's reinvestment risk, the extra reinvestment income that dominates. Whereas for a 4-year holding period, 7 minus 4, a +3 positive duration gap, not long enough for that reinvestment risk to dominate, so it's price risk that's most important, and hence an increase in yields will actually decrease your realized yield. So 2 things really to take away from this little session. First of all, just calculating realized yields could be a question on its own. Understand you've just got to work out what we paid, what the future value of coupons plus proceeds is, and stick it in your calculator to work out a realized yield. And know the relationship between Macaulay duration, investment horizon, and the duration gap, and the implications for an increase or decrease in yields on your realized yield. It all comes down to who wins, price risk or reinvestment risk.